we still have not had one single thought from Vin about Zane's revelation, right?
Yep.
A little frustrating.
Yep. We still have nothing going on. And that's just pending. It's pending.
Indeed. But we do get some demure answers this chapter, yeah?
Yeah, we do.
Do you know that sort of plot structure, I guess you can call it, in some cartoons where instead of following the main cast member, usually you follow one of the main cast's little pets and they go on some sort of cute adventure for the
Side
day?
quest. Yeah.
Yeah. Or do you remember that episode of Buffy where the Scooby Gang is doing something very important lest the whole world be destroyed, but they don't need Xander for it, so Xander is off dealing with like some school bully zombie thing, and we're just like checking in from time to time with the Scooby Gang, and it's like overly dramatic, and Xander's like, oh, okay, I'm fine.
I don't remember that, but that's cute.
It's a great episode. It's what this chapter felt like a little bit to me. Not really 1-to-1, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, but we do get important revelations and things. So it's not like useless. It's not that much of a side quest.
Yeah, no. But I do feel like Sanderson and Breeze have given us answers where they fall on the question of whether or not it's moral to soothe people, whether or not it's genuinely like buying someone a drink at a bar. Because it seems like Breeze doesn't quite believe that himself.
He's a bit confused, I think. It's okay in some contexts, in other contexts it's not. Okay. Interesting. In some contexts it's perfectly natural, but in that context,
right.
Which is kind of how you want it, I suppose.
Perhaps. I mean, I would argue that if it's not okay in that context, it's not okay in the other context either.
Exactly. But if there's any context we're gonna stop at, I'm glad it's that.
But I have one very big problem with this chapter.
Uh-oh.
Meaningfully problematic issue with this chapter. The solution to Breeze's woes is to simply not ingest metal. Because then you can't soothe someone. And the reason I say that this is a very, very big problem for this chapter is because I wonder if Sanderson wants to have this emotional payoff because of this soothing habit, but he has to overlook this oh so simple solution to get past it, and that feels like a big ding against the logic of this world. Does that make sense?
I understand, it makes sense, but I absolutely disagree.
Excellent, go on.
So it makes sense, yes, absolutely. That's logically, why not just not take in metal and stop automatically soothing people and whatever. It's like an addiction or whatever. It's being way too vulnerable to not ingest metal. To him, he's using it all the time. He can't turn it on and off in the way that you think. I think it's so tempting that's built into his character. It's so tempting that having it not having it is just not an option. Okay, because it's so much part of him.
But that's not expressed in any of his prose. He doesn't think to himself, I know I could just stop ingesting metal, but it's such a part of who I am. Or I don't think I could handle not being able to soothe.
Yeah, but I feel like that's still inherent. I don't feel like I'm headcanoning it. It's already there. It's like it's not even a question. It doesn't even consciously come to his mind that he needs to stop. He always needs to have a supply of metal. I guess what I thought of was like Vin would never just give up her metals. It's like saying like because she needs all of those, all of that ability in her life. She needs it. It's like cutting off a limb if you think about it that way. That I don't know. I just didn't see it as that as glaringly as you did. Like I understand he could just not have it, but it was an easy solution for me. Is oh well, I could not have it, but that's just way too difficult a solution actually.
You can have the vial on you in case of an emergency,
Mm.
but if you're concerned about soothing a woman, concerned that you would be soothing a woman unintentionally, and you know you've got a date planned, just
Mhm.
don't drink the metal.
Yeah, but
Maybe
that's part of that whole thing is part of his emotional battle in this. So I still find it interesting. I don't find it to be like a breaking point. I find it to be it strengthens this battle he has, in my opinion.
gotcha. Well, maybe I'll change my mind as we go along through the chapter,
Hmm.
as frequently I tend to do.
We'll
I,
see.
I, yeah, I did like the pairing of Breeze and Clubs. I like that they're friends,
Hmm.
and I enjoyed Breeze's POV and all
Yeah.
of that. So that's all great.
Mm.
Shall we get into
Right.
the chapter then?
Let's get into the chapter.
I think we're out of characters to do.
Let's do ourselves.
Hello, and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. For this particular series, I am joined by my wonderful co host, Dorkus, because I am that darn kitty.
Is that your South African accent?
My terrible attempt at it, yes.
I didn't recognize it at all.
Because it wasn't even close. I've tried to do a South African accent in my room many times. It never comes out even close to what it should be.
It sounded a bit southern, but I don't know what was happening.
I don't either. Just do your Merkin.
I can't do. Okay, I'll try. No, that I can't do a normal American accent. Dorcas and I are both going into the story completely new with almost no knowledge of the story or world.
Each segment we intend to cover what happens in each new chapter and discuss our experience along the way.
Hold on to your butts because this is Ascension Unleashed, a blind read through, and today we'll be covering chapter 36.
Chapter 36. I'm kidding.
You
Oh my
get
god.
those ones right, yeah, the chapter and the cover.
Yeah.
We both struggle with the R's in our respective accents that we're trying to do.
So it would
And they're
seem
so important.
Alendi was never the hero of ages. At best, I have amplified his virtues, creating a hero where there was none. At worst, I fear that all we believe may have been corrupted.
We have at least a little bit more this time, a
Yes.
little bit to the epigraph. I'm like, oh, look, there's something that I haven't seen before, or it's a little extra. Makes you think about the beliefs being corrupted. That's what I mean. That was the extra bit to me. It's like,
And
yes, we
how,
know the Alendi.
yeah, like, did he cause the corruption or did the corruption pre exist Alendi?
Mm. Is it a case of just what happens to people when there's something to believe in? Because we have that going. We have that in the chapter. We have this sudden belief that no, Vin is going to save the whole world now, and that's completely corrupted. It's just grown of its own accord. It seems.
Yeah,
I think that's the theme that I took going forward was beliefs are corruptible,
gotcha.
and they evolve
Yes.
without. They evolve beyond your intentions anyway.
Things spread like wildfire. Like,
Hmm.
dare I say it, whispers and rumors and gossip about yellow
Hmm.
suns. End of chapter
Yeah.
reference.
Hmm.
Once this warehouse had held swords and armor, scattered across its floors in heaps, like some mythical treasure. Sazed remembered walking through it, marveling at the preparations Kelsier had made without alerting any of his crew members. Those weapons had armed the rebellion on the eve of the survivor's own death, letting it take the city. Yay, more Sazed.
Hmm. It's nice to get a bit of a Sazed POV. I know it's just a tiny little bit, but just to think about what Sazed was thinking back when there was this warehouse reveal. We were in Vin's POV then. So,
Yeah, obviously this is a place of significance.
mhm.
There's a lot of Kelsier in this chapter.
Mhm. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Those weapons were now stored in lockers and armories. In their place, a desperate, beaten people huddled in what blankets they could find. There were very few men, none of fighting quality. Straff had pressed those into his army. These others, the weak, the sickly, the wounded, he had allowed to reach Luthadel, knowing that Elend wouldn't turn them away. Yeah, because Elend's good.
But it's like, yeah, I'm not going to give you anyone useful though. Not that it matters to Ellen.
Yeah. Sazed moved among them, offering what comfort he could. They had no furniture, and even changes of clothing were becoming scarce in the city. The merchants, realizing that warmth would be a priority for the upcoming winter, had begun raising prices on all their wares, not only foodstuffs. So, we get Sazed doing what Kelsier did in Book 1 a handful of times.
Giving hope. Yes, yes. Administering to the needy.
Yeah. Jesus
Yeah,
Kelsier.
he
Jesus
yeah,
Sazed.
Jesus. Yes, Jesus saws it. Yes.
And then the merchants are being dicks again.
Yeah, look at them capitalizing.
Yep. Sazed knelt beside a crying woman. Peace, Jenna dear, he said, his copper mind reminding him of her name. She shook her head. She had lost 3 children in the Kolos attack, 2 more in the flight to Luthadel. Now the final one, the babe she had carried the entire way, was sick. Sazed took the child from her arms, carefully studying his symptoms. Little had changed from the day before.
Is there hope, Master Terraceman?
Sazed glanced down at the thin, glassy-eyed baby. The chances were not good. How could he tell her such a thing? As long as he breathes, there is hope, dear woman. I will ask the king to increase your portion of food. You must keep him warm. Stay near the fires and use a damp cloth to drip water in his mouth, even when he is not eating. He has great need of liquids. So, is that lying, or is that trying to give hope? Like, should he have said it's not likely, but don't lose hope?
Like, it's not lying. Yeah, it's lying. Sorry. As long as he breathes, there is hope. Yeah, technically, there's not much hope. Okay, there's not much. It's a very, very small hope. So he's not going to say, you know what? There's no hope. I'm okay with him lying, I suppose. In this situation.
Yeah. Because doctors need to have bedside manners and all, but they
Hmm.
aren't supposed to lie. But also, and I don't necessarily think this is a lie. He's just like not being negative. But where was I going with this? Um,
Mm, he is at least giving just advice on what she's supposed to do. So it's like he needs this. We can give him hope. I don't know. Like
morale.
I said, I'm making it. I'm making it. I'm coping by saying he said hope. He just didn't say how much. Okay.
Right. I remember where I was going with my previous thought. It's that
Yay.
hope matters. Being
Hmm.
optimistic about your chances do matter. Morale matters uh, somehow
Yeah.
in medical issues. There are people who should have died but didn't because of their mindset through the sickness.
Yeah. Exactly. You don't want to be making the woman feel like, you know what? It'll be better if I just smother my child right now. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
Point here being, to be clear, I don't think he's lying.
Mm.
I'm not, he wasn't as negative as maybe the woman deserves, but I think he handled this about as well as he could have. I don't
Yeah.
have any real issue here.
Mm-hmm.
Genevieve nodded dully, taking back the baby. How Sazed wished he could give her more. A dozen different religions passed through his mind. He had spent his entire life trying to encourage people to believe in something other than the Lord Ruler. Yet for some reason, at this moment, he found it difficult to preach one of them to Genevieve. Now, this is a really interesting line of thought, as well as what's coming up, because
Mm-hmm.
it speaks to Sazed's disillusionment right now, yeah?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
It had been different before the collapse. Each time he'd spoken of her religion, Sazed had felt a subtle sense of rebellion. Even if people hadn't accepted the things he taught, and they rarely had, his words had reminded them that there had once been beliefs other than the doctrines of the Steel Ministry. So, this really highlights his rebellious attitude as not being so different from that of the crews. And
Yeah.
it makes one question, does Sazed himself have a chosen religion? He picks and chooses in various given moments, but does he
Mm.
have one that he follows more than any other?
Yeah. His mission has just always been to spread word of whatever religion. But what is his belief? He hasn't. I suppose he just hasn't had time to consider that, or hasn't had hasn't mandated that for himself. He's like, no, I've got to just continue with my rebellion and whatever. So that was just what he was doing with his faith in this. His faith was more in being against the Lord Ruler. So it doesn't matter which one it is, as long as it's not the Lord Ruler. But now it's like, no, you would need to pick one. Well, not need to, but what do you believe, Sazed? Because now you also have space to decide for yourself. That thing has been defeated. What guides you now going forward? Because you've defeated that guy. But that's what I like about you saying his disillusionment, because it's like, okay, that's what happens. You have this massive defeat, this massive massive victory, really, and then it's like, now what? Well, now what? There's even more work to be done, because it it's not as simple as it was, as you thought it was.
And I imagine someone could make an argument that now, in this time of greatest strife, is the most important time to have faith. Well, which is essentially what he just told the woman himself,
Hmm.
have hope.
Yeah, this is when people actually are most vulnerable to being preached to, because that you can now give them the solution to all their problems through religion. Not that you want to.
Yes. Now there was nothing to rebel against. In the face of the terrible grief he saw in Genevieve's eyes, he found it difficult to speak of religions long dead, gods long forgotten. Esoterica would not ease this woman's pain. Who is Esoterica, and how does she not have the ability to eat? Terrible joke. Moving on. Sazed stood, moving on to the next group of people.
Sazed?
Sazed turned. He hadn't noticed Tyndwell entering the warehouse. The doors of the large structure were closed against approaching night, and the fire pits gave an inconsistent light. Holes had been knocked in the roof to let out the smoke. If one looked up, trails of mist could be seen creeping into the room, though they evaporated before they reached halfway to the floor. Okay, couple of things there.
Hmm.
Approaching night. This invokes Vin's notice of the mists coming earlier, yeah?
Hmm. Yeah. He's not noticing it,
Yeah.
but it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's again highlighting the mists don't enter into the buildings thing.
Hmm.
The refugees didn't often look up,
You've been here nearly all day.
Tyndwell said. The room was remarkably quiet, considering its occupancy. Fires crackled and people lay silent in their pain or numbness. There are many wounded here. I am the best one to look after them, I think. I am not alone. The king has sent others, and Lord Breeze is here, soothing the people's despair. Breeze is here doing good things.
Yeah, Breeze is here making people feel a little bit breezier. Thank you.
Sazed nodded to the side where Breeze sat in a chair, ostensibly reading a book. He looked terribly out of place in the room, wearing his fine three-piece suit, yet his mere presence said something remarkable in Sazed's estimation. These poor people, their lives were terrible under the Lord Ruler. Now even what little they had has been taken from them. And they were only a tiny number, 400 compared with the hundreds of thousands who still lived in Luthadel. What would happen when the final stores of food ran out? Rumors were already abroad regarding the poisoned wells, and Sazed had heard that some of their stored food had been sabotaged too. That's new information.
Mm-hmm.
What would happen to these people? How long could the siege continue? I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to last much longer.
Yeah, for this made me actually go, okay, the time is now, and a lot of people are about to die. It made me go, this is actually, like, I know it's not like I haven't been aware that it's been a disaster, but it just made me think of how many fatalities there's going to be in the upcoming chapters. This is not good. Like, we've been holding on, I suppose. People have been holding on, but a lot of people are going to die. And I don't know, it just made me think of it. It's so much closer now. And that made me just go, oh, Lord. There's no way that anyone gets out of this unscathed.
Yeah. Who in the crew do you think is gonna not be invited back for book 3?
I don't want to think about it, but maybe clubs.
Oh no, not clubs. Yeah, probably clubs.
Yeah, probably clubs. But like, if we're gonna just go age-wise,
no, I think it might be Breeze.
It might be Breeze. Yeah,
he's had a lot of attention this book, more than Ham, certainly, more than Dachshund, more than clubs. I think we're setting up a heroic last stand kind of a situation, to be honest.
Yeah, we might lose Breeze this book. I'm feeling you on that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, what would happen when the siege ended? What would happen when the armies finally began to attack and pillage? What destruction, what grief would the soldiers cause in searching for the hidden atium?
You do care for them.
Sazed turned toward her, then he looked down. Not as much as I should, perhaps. What is that line, Sazed? Come on.
I don't know. Maybe it's just that it's his guilt, maybe, just coming through that I should have been here earlier. I don't know. I should have not studied. I don't get it. It's just Sazed being
humble to a problematic degree.
No, I can see it. You confuse me, Sazed.
I seem to have a talent in that area.
You look tired. Where is your bronze mind?
Suddenly, Sazed felt the fatigue. Oh, really? He suddenly felt the fatigue? He'd been ignoring it, but her words seemed to bring it in like a wave rolling over him. Oh. Mm-hmm. Sadly, I did not catch the meaning of these lines the first time I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I did. Yeah, I didn't either. I was just like, okay, and we have enough evidence that Breeze is there, so some sudden emotion is probably Breeze. But I think I think both of us were probably just too interested in this conversation between the two of them, which is exactly what.
It. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. They're not thinking about whether he's influencing them. Sazed's smart enough to think that up, but he's also so tired anyway. So
yeah. So what I'm saying is excellent, subtle Sanderson there.
Mm-hmm. Excellent, subtle Breeze.
That too. He sighed. I used most of my wakefulness in my run to Lucidal. I was so eager to get here. His studies had languished recently. With the problems in the city and the arrival of the refugees, he hadn't had much time. Besides, he had already transcribed the rubbing. Further work would require detailed cross-referencing to other works, searching for clues. He probably wouldn't even have time to... He frowned, noting the odd look in Tindwell's eyes.
Okay, before we get to this Tindwell look, okay, my thing is, if there's some big revelation in the rubbing transcription, right, we have not had any note of it since, right? We haven't had any, Sazed thought of this because, it was in there. So that to me means, okay, there's no revelation in the rubbing itself. There's no like, oh wow, aha moment there.
At
The
least none that
cross,
he will figure out.
yes,
Tyndall will, I
exactly.
bet.
Yeah, something like that, yes. And the cross referencing and whatever, that is what will bring out the further study is definitely has to be what causes us to know what needs to be done. Like if there is some huge revelation that he should have seen in the rubbing already, I'd be a bit disappointed because I'm like, no, no, no. We
Plot
don't need.
twist.
Yeah, what
Rashek was
blister?
right all along. The
Rashek,
hero of
no.
ages is gonna be a terraceman. And
Yeah,
it's gonna be Sawzet.
it's Sazed. Look, I love Sazed, so why not?
He frowned, noting the odd look in Tyndwell's eyes.
All right, show me
Show you?
whatever it was you found. The discoveries that prompted you to run across two dominances. Show it to me.
Suddenly, everything seemed to lighten. His fatigue, his worry, even his sorrow. Really? Well, that's convenient.
Suddenly.
I would love to, he said quietly. Very sweet. They like each other.
They do, and we get like confirmation of this through, I think, of quite a reliable source. Breeze is very intuitive. So if he sees things there, then it's not just us going, "Ah," it's not just us shipping. It's actually for real.
Right. Another job well done, Breeze thought, congratulating himself as he watched the two terracemen leave the warehouse. And then I was like, yay, Breeze POV. This is new.
Hmm. Yeah, I was excited.
Most people, even noblemen, misunderstood soothing. They thought of it as some kind of mind control, and even those who knew more presumed that soothing was an invasive, terrible thing. Breeze had never seen it that way. Soothing wasn't invasive. If it was, then ordinary interaction with another person was comparably invasive. Soothing, when done right, was no more a violation of another person than it was for a woman to wear a low-cut gown or speak in a commanding voice. All three produced common, understandable, and, most important, natural reactions in people. So that's a very good, quick
Okay.
summary of the Vin Breeze lesson in Book 1.
Yeah, and this is the underlying belief that's supposed to continue into the context of seduction, but doesn't.
Right. And as I've said, and as we'll find out, there's a part of Breeze that doesn't actually quite believe this. Or he's
Yes,
afraid he
yeah.
might be wrong, rather.
Mm. Logically he should be totally okay with using this to seduce. A low cut shirt for a woman, certain woman, that would work. So there should be nothing morally wrong with you soothing or writing, right?
Do you
Mm.
think it would be wrong to soothe a woman in a bar?
Yeah, it's just it's a superpower. She doesn't have she doesn't have a yeah, she doesn't have anything that she can do against it. I think that's what is what makes it like you're taking advantage
Gotcha.
of her.
And it's
Mm.
been so long since we had the conversation back in Mistborn
Mm.
Abridged, but you do think it would be okay to soothe a crowd in a fire, right? To help
Yeah,
calm them?
yeah. Which is why it's not like, oh no, Breeze is here. It's like, no, yes, we need Breeze to stop these people from killing each other or killing themselves.
Right. Take Sawzed, for example. Was it invasive to make the man less fatigued, so he could better go about his ministrations? Was it wrong to soothe away his pain, just a little bit, thereby making him better able to cope with suffering? Tyndwell was an even more applicable example. Perhaps some would call Breeze a meddler for soothing her sense of responsibility and her disappointment when she saw Sawzed. But Breeze had not created the emotions that the disappointment had been overshadowing. Emotions like curiosity, respect, love. Yes, she
So
likes him.
okay, so yeah, she does. But what I'm love was I love that that was the last one that he listed. But also this it comes in later as well. But I just want to point out here those sort of things as much as they say these soothers and writers, whatever the emotional elementers say, they don't read emotions. They have such a sense of them that it's as if they are reading emotions. They can feel that there is love there to riot or soothe. They can feel that there's respect there to riot or soothe. So obviously, in Breeze's case, he sees there's respect, love, all of that. That's some kind of reading, and I guess it's a magical, mystical. I don't know. Is it just reading their body language, or is there some extra sense that they have? That's what I'm wondering about, because they keep trying to say that there's no extra sense. They don't read emotions. It's like, well, you do. You really do see respect, love, all of that stuff there, and you see it a lot more clearly than most people will.
Yeah. I don't know. No, if soothing were simple mind control, Tindwyl would have turned away from Sazed as soon as the two left Breeze's area of influence. But Breeze knew that she wouldn't. A crucial decision had been made, and Breeze had not made that decision for her. The moment had been building for weeks. It would have occurred with or without Breeze. So, a couple of different things here. I do
Mhm,
agree a crucial decision had been made and Breeze didn't make it for her. I agree with that
mhm,
completely.
mhm,
But apparently not all soothers are as talented as Breeze. So
mhm.
if someone's going around soothing people to the point of like it being noticeable, then is that not mind control or like an attempt at mind control then?
Yeah, it is. It is like you said, his area of influence that is controlling them within there. That you can use it as mind control, but the way he uses it, and the best kind of emotional elementer uses what is there, because that actually sticks,
Hmm.
and that's actually more powerful. But you can, if necessary, do basically what Vin did to Straff, that sort of thing, where you can just numb the
Paralyze
mind.
them.
But
Right.
yeah, paralyze them. It is kind of mind control in that sense, but it doesn't last long. I think that that's a cool limiter. I think that an area of influence is important.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's like Breeze could have just as easily have kept them apart longer by influencing Tindwell's frustration with Sazed that he's not like the other Terracemen. Her anger that he won't listen to the Synod and so on. That
Yeah,
he's
he could have soothed everything else. So he can't riot, eh? But he can soothe.
right.
Yeah. So
Point
he
being, he could have selectively edited in the opposite
mhm, direction. Yeah.
direction away from, yeah, you know what I
But she
mean.
wouldn't have made. She was so it would. He could have slowed down the decision.
Yeah, or made her less likely to come to the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she would still ultimately make the decision, but well,
Yeah. He would keep the tension going in her mind. It's still a question. Here, it's just like she had that moment where finally everything, all the emotions worked into a certain thing where she made the decision
yeah.
because of him.
He had merely helped it happen sooner. Smiling to himself, Breeze checked his pocket watch. He still had a few more minutes, and he settled back in his chair, sending out a general soothing wave, lessening people's grief and pain. Focusing on so many at once, he couldn't be very specific. Some would find themselves made a little emotionally numb as he pushed too strongly against them, but it would be good for the group as a whole. Yes, I do understand he can't riot, he can only soothe. But
Yeah.
again, he can,
The effect is kind of the same by soothing absolutely everything else.
yeah,
You can pick one. Yeah.
yeah, he can choose opportune or inopportune
Mhm,
times to do it in either direction.
mhm,
He didn't read his book. In truth, he couldn't understand how Elend and the rest spent so much time with them. Dreadful, boring things. Breeze could only see himself reading if there were no people around. Instead, he went back to what he'd been doing before Sazed had drawn his attention. He studied the refugees, trying to decide what each one was feeling. I liked this paragraph because it really makes this narration, this prose, feel like Breeze.
mhm. Yeah, just his thoughts are just like, ugh, what are we even doing here with this book? Very Breeze. That's the thing. He's such a character that you need all the bits of him.
Yeah. This was the other great misunderstanding about soothing. Allomancy wasn't nearly as important as observational talent. True, having a subtle touch certainly helped, but soothing didn't give an allomancer the ability to know someone's feelings. Those Breeze had to guess on his own.
Okay, so sorry, this is the discussion I was having earlier. That's why I brought it up there, because I brought it up earlier because it was an occurrence of it. Now he's explaining how he does it. He's saying that allomancy does not give him a sense of their emotions, but I feel like it's so highly developed in tandem with being able to soothe that it is almost as if they have some sort of sixth sense for this. Like they know way more than just a normal person would about reading someone.
Yeah, well, clearly they have emotions on the mind by virtue
Hmm.
of their abilities, so they would dedicate more time to learning to read people. Developed skill.
But they also know what they're pushing and pulling. It's like that they can see the threads in a person's brain, and they can push and pull those threads. Like, so there has to be some sort of feeling of that. That's what I'm thinking, like in this magic,
Hmm.
that there has to be something that you can touch, that you perceive there. Because like, oh, I felt I Breeze soothed her emotions. Like, well, what does that feel like? Can you feel, all the different kinds of emotions and pick one out?
Well,
Like,
we
that's what
know
I'm saying. It's so interconnected that it's not just a body language expert.
we know when Vin Duralumin read the crew that one evening that she could, what was it, like virtually see which emotions
Hmm.
were being used on Elend. So I do think that I agree that I think there's an
Hmm.
intuitive feeling, not unlike the thumping that
Hmm.
Vin can feel when she's looking piercing copper clouds and like listening to people burn metal. Yeah, I definitely think there's an intuitive element at play.
Yes. I feel like he downplays it. He's like, "Oh, Breeze had to guess on his own." It's like, yeah, but you downplay the skill that you have, and that the way that it's it's inextricable from your ability to use emotional animancy.
So you think he's confusing his own soothing with his own ability to read people and act accordingly?
He's not. He's thinking that he just completely reads people separately. He is able to do that, and then soothing is has nothing to do with it. But I think that they are completely combined.
Gotcha.
Which is another thing that pushes towards me being like, yeah, it's hard for him to exist without having a supply of metal. It's like not having, it's like having a limp if he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I don't know if I completely agree. I understand your point. It would probably be very difficult for him to go a day without ingesting the metal
Mhm.
to soothe. But at the same time, it's like there's your solution.
It's not an option.
This was the other great misunderstanding about soothing. Allomancy wasn't nearly as important as observational talent. True, having a subtle touch certainly helped, but soothing didn't give an allomancer the ability to know someone's feelings. Those Breeze had to guess on his own. It all came back to what was natural. Even the most inexperienced Ska would realize they were being soothed if unexpected emotions began bouncing around inside them. True subtlety in soothing was about encouraging natural emotions, all done by carefully making the right other emotions less powerful. People were a patchwork of feelings. Usually, what they thought they were feeling at the moment only related to which emotions were currently most dominant within them. The careful soother saw what was beneath the surface. He understood what a man was feeling, even when that man himself didn't acknowledge or understand those emotions. Such was the case with Sazed and Tindwell.
Ooh, yeah, they don't know they care about each other or acknowledge. I think they know that, but they don't acknowledge it. They don't consciously go, "Damn, I love that girl."
I agree. And again, we're getting a bit more of his philosophy and how he perceives people, which is important setup for his worries later on.
Hmm. He uses what is there. He's not adding anything, which I understand as well. His it would be easier for him to think that way because he is a soother. He can't actually riot things that aren't there.
Right. Odd pair, that one, Breeze thought to himself, idly soothing one of the ska to make him more relaxed as he tried to sleep. The rest of the crew is convinced that those two are enemies, but hatred rarely creates that measure of bitterness and frustration. No, those two emotions come from an entirely different set of problems. Of course, isn't Sozed supposed to be a eunuch? I wonder how all this came about.
That was also a subtle Sanderson. It's like, he doesn't say, "Oh, it's love," or whatever, and it's lust or whatever it is. He just goes, "Isn't Sazed supposed to be a eunuch?" That's how he gives us the idea that this is about romance.
Yeah,
Obviously,
deeper.
it's rather obvious before, but he puts that in there. And I wonder, instead of him just going, "They love each other," like, So I appreciated that.
His speculations trailed off as the warehouse doors opened. Elend walked in, Ham unfortunately accompanying him. Elend was wearing one of his white uniforms, complete with white gloves and a sword. The white was an important symbol. With all of the ash and soot in the city, a man in white was quite striking. Elend's uniforms had to be...
This is a typo.
This is a typo. Elend's uniform had to have been crafted of special fabrics designed to be resistant to ash, yet they still had to be scrubbed every day. The effect was worth the effort. So he's still playing general, which is important.
He's still anointed with white.
And the army will presumably still answer to him, even though he's not the king anymore. In case of an attack, which means if there's an attack, and better yet, if it's an attack that they can somehow win, which seems unlikely, the people will see him commanding a successful army and be more likely to vote for him. Breeze immediately picked at Elend's emotions, making the man less tired, less uncertain, though the second was becoming almost unnecessary. Noted. That was partially the terrace woman's doing. Breeze was impressed with her ability to change how people felt, considering her lack of allomancy. Yeah, everyone's noticing that Elend is pretty much at peak Elend.
Yeah, he is transformed, and they know that it is because of Tindwell, but the thing is, he doesn't need Tindwell there for it to occur. Her sphere of influence or whatever, her influence has continued way more than before.
Agreed. Breeze left Elend's emotions of disgust and pity. Both were appropriate considering the environment. He did give Ham a nudge to make him less argumentative. Breeze wasn't in a mood to deal with the man's prattling. Mean.
Yeah, okay, didn't you also feel that? Because, like, Ham, unfortunately, he said Ham unfortunately accompanied him, so that was one, but I took that, okay, it's just dry. And then he's just like the man's prattlings at the moment. I was like, oh, so he really doesn't like them. Aw.
Well, here's the thing. It's like, in one sentence, he's helping Elend, and in another, he's manipulating Ham because he doesn't feel like talking to Ham. That's it's two very different motivations contrasting there. And one of them feels dishonest and dirty. Poor Ham. He stood as the two men approached. People perked up as they saw Elend, his presence bringing them a hope that Breeze couldn't emulate with allomancy. They whispered, calling Elend king. So, Sanderson is very much reminding us in the last several chapters that people still call him king.
Yeah. The people that don't necessarily count properly in the assembly, but the people that count in real life. Do think of him that way.
Breeze, Elend said, nodding. Is Sazed here? He just left, I'm afraid. Elend seemed distracted. Well, I'll find him later. Ham, tomorrow I want you to round up the clothing merchants on Kenton Street and bring them here to see this. They might not like that, Elend, Ham said. I hope they don't, but we'll see how they feel about their prices once they visit this room. I can understand food's expense, considering its scarcity, but there is no reason but greed to deny the people clothing. Ham nodded, but Breeze could see the reticence in his posture. Okay, so good Elend. He's gonna shame the merchants.
Yeah, he's gonna shame the merchants into stopping their price gouging. Call me Ellen. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Ham nodded, but Breeze could see the reticence in his posture. Did the others not realize how strangely non-confrontational Ham was? He liked to argue with friends, but he rarely came to any conclusions in his philosophizing. Plus, he absolutely hated fighting with strangers. Breeze had always found that an odd attribute in one who was essentially hired to hit people. He gave Ham a bit of a soothing to make him less worried about confronting the merchants. So that's actually a somewhat empathetic view of Ham from Breeze. None of it is out of line with what I understand him to be either.
Yeah, it seems congruent, and it's finely nuanced the way you would expect Breeze to be able to perceive someone,
Yeah.
and he's kind of confused with how some people just don't see it in that much detail. He's got HD vision when it comes to empathy and people. Everybody else is just like, Ham equals confrontational because thug. So yeah, I like this. It makes me like Breeze even more, and his abilities even more. And I like the pros addressing those things. I
Yeah.
don't need them, but they're interesting. And also, after all that, like, oh, he doesn't care about this man's prattling, whatever. But then he gives him a soothing to make him less worried about confronting the merchants. Like, I don't think it's that necessary for him to do that, but it's nice that he's done that.
Yeah, that was a niceness. And Ham is such a
Mm-hmm.
puppy dog.
Mm.
You aren't going to stay here all night, are you, Breeze? Elend asked. Lord Ruler, no. He said Lord Ruler. Lord Ruler, no. My dear man, you're lucky you managed to get me to come at all. Honestly, this is no place for a gentleman. The dirt, the depressing atmosphere, and that's not even making mention of the smell. Ham frowned. Breeze, someday you're going to have to learn to think about other people. As long as I can think about them from a distance, Hammond, I shall be happy to engage in the activity. That was clever and funny.
I laughed out loud when he said that. It was just a great turn of phrase. And I understand you, Ham, but he actually does think about other people. Just sometimes he does, and sometimes he doesn't.
Yep.
Sometimes he just doesn't give a damn. He'll think about the person and go, "Yeah, cool, but my feelings are more important." So he's not stupid. He definitely does think of others.
Yep.
It's just sporadic.
Ham shook his head. You're hopeless. Are you heading back to the palace then? Yes, actually, Breeze said, checking his pocket watch. Do you need a ride? I brought my own carriage. Elend nodded, then turned to Ham, and the two retreated the way they had come, talking about Elend's next meeting with an assemblyman.
All right.
Right.
This Ellen Ham, that they're besties, eh? Good lord.
Well, he's the bodyguard when Vin's not around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Breeze wandered into the palace a short time later. He nodded to the door guards, soothing away their mental fatigue. They perked up in response, watching the mists with renewed vigilance. It wouldn't last long, but little touches like that were second nature to Breeze. So here he acknowledges it's not going to last
Mm-hmm.
long. So that seems to contrast with his thought about Tindwyl leaving his sphere of influence.
Mm.
A
Maybe it's
little bit.
because
Not
yeah,
entirely,
it's a
but a
little
little
bit.
bit.
Yeah, the thing is that was something so important and the emotions involved are so deep and complicated
True,
that
he's more familiar with
pushing
the
yeah,
situation. He's not
yeah,
really
the
doing that
decision
much.
mm-hmm. Yeah, he's literally he's just doing a small like he says it's a small touch. He knows it's not going to last long, but he says it's second nature to him. It just happens. He's like, well, I'll just do that. Hey, any increased ability in your team is good. So it's like an environmental effect just around Breeze.
Yeah. It was getting late, and few people were in the hallways. He made his way through the kitchens, nudging the scullery maids to make them more chatty. It would make their cleaning pass more quickly. Beyond the kitchens, he found a small stone room lit by a couple of plain lamps, set with a small table. It was one of the palace's booth-like solitary dining rooms. Clubs sat in one corner of the booth, legs stretched out on the bench. He eyed Breeze with a scowl. You're late. You're early, Breeze said, sliding into the bench across from Clubs. Same thing, Clubs grumbled. So already you're like, oh, but these two don't like each other. Or at least one
Mm.
doesn't like the other. This'll be neat.
We're like, who likes clubs? Who spends time with clubs just for fun or
Yeah.
whatever this is? Yeah.
There was a second cup on the table, along with a bottle of wine. Breeze unbuttoned his vest, sighing quietly, and poured himself a cup as he leaned back with his legs up on his bench. Clubs sipped his wine. Does Clubs seem like a wine drinker to you, though?
Yeah, I think he can be fine. He knows his stuff. He's not Calcia. He's not a dandy, but why not develop a taste for things?
See, I wonder if he's more of a whiskey guy.
Yeah, you can still have fine taste in whiskey.
You have your cloud up? Breeze asked. Around you? Always. Breeze smiled, taking a sip, and relaxed. When Clubs was burning copper, not only were every Alamancer's abilities invisible to those burning bronze, but more important, at least to Breeze, it made Clubs immune to any form of emotional Alamancy.
Interesting. In my edition, there is an extra thing. It says, though he rarely had opportunities to use his powers anymore, Clubs was a smoker. So it just made that
Hmm.
note. Just that okay, Clubs is not doesn't he's not usually he's not doing what he used to do on the crew. Like he's not just a smoker you bring out. He's there to actually train the armies more than anything.
Yeah, I can see why. Well, it's interesting because I think your edition is later, but I
Mm-hmm.
actually think the prose is better without it, to be
Mm.
honest. But maybe that's just because like I already knew that. I didn't need to know whether or not he
Yeah.
uses it regularly. It
Mm-hmm.
felt a little exposition-y to me when you read it.
Yeah. It's in further exposition that we already know. So
Yeah.
it increases the clunk of it.
Yeah. Not that it would be the repetitive Sanderson issue, because we haven't been reminded of that fact in a little while, or a
Mm.
long while. But again, to me, it would feel like pointless exposition. Whereas without it,
Mm.
the paragraphs and dialogue seem to move somewhat cleanly.
Yeah, and I do like it's just the reminder
Hmm.
of what copper's doing. It's a reminder of the relevance of a copper cloud here.
Agreed. Don't see why that makes you so happy. I thought you liked playing with emotions. I do. Then why come drink with me every night? So they drink every night?
Hmm.
They're
It's a date
friends.
every night. They're proper friends.
For some reason, I imagine them like playing poker or something.
Yeah.
You mind the company? Clubs didn't answer. That was pretty much his way of saying he didn't mind. Breeze eyed the grumpy general. Most of the other crew members stayed away from Clubs. Kelsier had brought him in at the last moment, since the copper cloud they usually used had been caught and beheaded. I remember
Oh well,
that.
that's nice. Mine said usually used had died. Well, he just
Uh,
died.
Either way, good stuff. Good. This is like decent rememberingness.
Hmm.
Do you know what it's like, Clubs? Being a soother? No. It gives you remarkable control. It's a wonderful feeling, being able to influence those around you, always feeling like you have a handle on how people will react. Sounds delightful, Club said flatly. Yet it does things to you. I spend most of my time watching people, tweaking, nudging, and soothing. That's changed me. I don't look at people the same way. It's hard to simply be friends with someone when you see them as something to be influenced and changed. So, against my point that he can simply stop
Hmm.
taking metal, he
Hmm.
states here it's not even just being able to do it, it's that it
Hmm.
has affected how he views people and interactions with people, presumably
Exactly. Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah, it is regardless. Sees a lot more than most people, and he can or whether or not he's doing it. So he remember that actually the argument of me saying that the ability to see emotions is allomantic, that actually comes into play here. He has already stated that his sense of people's emotions has nothing to do with allomancy. So him not burning metal would not take away that ability to feel everybody, basically feel what people are feeling and want to influence it. So that it's like his vision is so clear. Yeah, that's the problem. He sees people differently. But that being said, it makes him feel different knowing that he can't influence clubs. So
Makes him like clubs.
yeah,
So
but like you said, him not burning metal, not having any metal would mean he cannot influence him. I think it's just a psychological thing. It's a conscious this knowing that he has no ability against this person is more powerful than whether he has the metal or not. I'm finding it difficult to explain. It's just such a nuanced thing. It's such a psychological thing. It's not a logical thing.
yeah, I think he should detox for a couple days. Clubs grunted. So that's why we never used to see you with women. Breeze nodded. I can't help it anymore. I always touch the emotions of everyone around me, and so when a woman comes to love me... He liked to think he wasn't invasive, yet how could he trust anyone who said they loved him? Was it he or his allomancy that they responded to? So that line right there is the
Mhm.
line that undercuts his previously stated beliefs that it is
Mhm.
just a low cut top, that it is just buying a guy a beer.
Mhm. It's actually the inner conflict that he isn't even aware of.
Yeah, and
His complete contradiction, he is not aware of it. He doesn't even think far enough to go, "That's completely against what I was thinking earlier."
yeah, and I love the circumstance of it. I love the conflict of it, the emotional living place of it. That is
Mhm.
all wonderful.
Mhm.
It's just I am struggling to get over the whole you can go a couple days without drinking metals then
Yeah,
of it. And
I
maybe
think
I'm just being like really stubborn here. I empathize with Breeze. I like what Sanderson is doing for Breeze and his arc,
mhm.
but at the
You
same
know what?
time.
I'm thinking I'm just very preoccupied with the emotional place that he's in. So I'm very interested in it. So I understand it. But that makes me think that no, we should see what happens when Breeze is deprived of the metals. Like as the character, for the character, he should be deprived. He should deprive himself. It is a mechanism he needs to if, for this inner conflict. He needs to figure it out. I think you're right in that respect, but that's all filtered through this emotional. What did you call it? Emotional. Did you say home place? Something like that. You said the emotional space that he's inhabiting.
Oh, yeah. No,
So
please,
all
that
the
was
way
like
I'm
50
seeing.
minutes ago. I don't remember what I said.
No,
I'm
it
kidding.
was literally like 3 minutes ago. um, but yeah,
The emotional
he
living space, the circumstance.
yes. Yes, exactly. My view of him is filtered through all of that. So you saying don't burn metals is not a logical problem to me. It's more like a hey, let's suggest that to Breeze to see if we can emotionally he can develop further. Maybe that will happen. I want that to happen in his arc. It mustn't just be oh, clubs is the only place that I can feel safe.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, because the other aspect here is that clearly, as demonstrated when Set crashed the assembly meeting, Breeze knows that his habit, if we're going to characterize it as an
Mhm.
addiction, hampered Ellen's chances at being king. And maybe we're building to him wanting to deprive himself of metal.
Yeah. Or avenged by circumstance being forced out of it
Yeah,
and then having to figure out which is kind of a thing that happens with superpowers in stories. You take away the hero's superpower and see what happens.
yeah. And it also harkens back to what I liked so much at the start of book one with Vin's whole I don't want to become dependent on the metals. And Sanderson didn't really, if I recall correctly, I had an issue slightly later in book 1 where suddenly she's just comfortable using it all the time, but it works really well. If Breeze is going through thematic issues of addiction with regard to his metals, that mirrors Vin going through her exhaustion arc and use of metals as well, which is really nice.
Yeah, I love it.
Clubs filled his cup. You're a lot chillier than you act. Breeze smiled. Although Clubs was immune to his touch, he was always completely forthcoming with his emotions. Everything made him grumpy. Manipulating him through non-allomantic means had proven to be a fruitless waste of time. That's funny.
Yeah, but also, you're a manipulative person, Breeze, clearly.
Yeah.
Manipulating him through non-allomantic means. So that's what you do when you don't have metal anyway. When you don't have allomancy, you still try and manipulate people. So Clubs is now an exception, apparently, because he just cannot be manipulated. He's met his match.
Haha. The amusing thing is you almost didn't join the crew because of me. Damn shooters. But you're immune to us. To your allomancy, maybe, but that isn't the only way you people do things. A man always has to watch himself around shooters. Then why let me join you every evening for wine? Clubs was silent for a moment, and Breeze almost thought he wasn't going to respond. Finally, Clubs muttered, You're not as bad as most. Aw,
wow,
he likes him.
Yeah, I might as well have said, like, I love you.
Breeze took a gulp of wine. Did you imagine that as just like a big gulp? Or...
wow, yeah, proper.
That is as honest a compliment as I think I've ever received. Don't let it ruin you. Oh, I think I'm too late for ruining, Breeze said, topping off his cup. This crew, Kel's plan, has already done a thorough job of that. Clubs nodded in agreement. What happened to us, Clubs? I joined Kel for the challenge. I never did know why you joined. Money. Now that's not entirely true. At all. He came back and he was all like, look, I'm not going to be around forever. If I can stick it to the Lord Ruler when I die, that's much cooler than money.
They were all lying to themselves in a way.
True. His plan fell apart. His army got destroyed and we stayed. Then he died and we still stayed. This blasted kingdom of Ellen's is doomed, you know. We won't last another month. It wasn't idle pessimism. Breeze knew people well enough to tell when they were serious. So I'm already loving the dynamics of this scene. I love what this scene is trying to accomplish, what its purpose is, and it feels just, the threat feels so imminent and unbeatable right now in a really beautiful way through these two talking about it.
Yeah, and they're just sitting here like, yeah, it's cool, we can have our drinks right now because we're not literally in a war yet, but it's just this calm before the storm, and we're sitting in like, you know what, we could probably run right now. We could probably try and leave. But look at us here. We're just sitting and drinking. And we're kind of wondering how it is that we became these kind of men, this kind of man, that we're sitting here and still doing what's right. This is not us. It's a lovely scene. And also, just the dialogue between them. Love it.
Yet here we are. I spent all day making Scarf feel better about the fact that their families were slaughtered. You spent all day training soldiers that, with or without your help, will barely last a few heartbeats against a determined foe. We follow a boy of a king who doesn't seem to have a shade of a clue exactly how bad this predicament is. Why? Clubs shook his head. Kelshir gave us a city, made us think we were responsible for protecting it. But we aren't that kind of people. We're thieves and scammers. We shouldn't care. I mean, I've gotten so bad that I soothe scullery maids so that they'll have a happier time at work. I might as well start dressing in pink and carrying around flowers. I could probably make quite a bundle at weddings. It's funny.
It was very funny, and I was just like, Breeze, you don't wear pink? Come on. I expect him to wear pink.
He's
it's
purple,
the flowers
man.
part that was funny. Yeah. He is Purple Man. But it's the flowers part that's funny. And yeah, he could just be your evening's entertainment at a wedding.
Club snorted, then raised his cup. To the survivor. May he be damned for knowing us better than we knew ourselves. Breeze raised his own cup. Damn him, he agreed quietly. The two fell silent. Talking to Clubs tended to turn into, well, not talking. However, Breeze felt a simple contentment. Soothing was wonderful. It made him who he was, but it was also work. Even birds couldn't fly all the time.
Okay, so he's got some sort of relief. That's another thing. It's just because he can't with clubs, that's when he won't do it.
But the
He
real...
still feels like yeah.
Go on.
No, I want you to do the real.
But the real question is he feeling this contentment because of our next character to join the scene?
Mm. There you are!
Breeze snapped his eyes open. Alrion stood at the entrance to the room, at the edge of the table. She wore light blue. Where had she gotten so many dresses? Her makeup was immaculate, of course, and there was a bow in her hair. That long blonde hair, common in the West, but almost unheard of in the Central Dominance, and that perky, inviting figure. Desire immediately blossomed inside him. No, Breeze thought. She's half your age, you dirty old man, dirty!
I want to ask. Okay, well, when we get there, I'll ask. Never mind.
Okay. Alrion, he said uncomfortably, shouldn't you be in bed or something? She rolled her eyes, shooing his legs out of the way so she could sit on the bench beside him.
It's only 9 o'clock, Breeze. I'm 18, not 10.
You might as well be, he thought, looking away from her, trying to focus on something else. He knew that he should be stronger, shouldn't let the girl get near him, but he did nothing as she slid up to him and took a drink from his cup. He sighed, putting his arm around her shoulders. Clubs shook his head, the hint of a smile on his lips.
Yeah, so he's not very good at controlling his impulses anyway. I have questions. I need to ask you, isn't it that Clubs has a copper cloud, so this emotional allomancy shouldn't be working on, or is it only Clubs that is immune?
It's a good question. I had that same question. I think that they can choose whether or not it's themselves or area of effect.
Including area of effect, because I'm not thinking. I don't think it's either or. I think it's just that they can extend it from themselves outward.
I think so, yeah.
Because didn't we have that in the previous? We had been thinking of that in the previous chapter about having soothers or rioters or whatever, emotional allomancers. Or no. She wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about copper clouds and having a smoker in the room to ensure that emotional allomancy wasn't going to be used. So that's why I'm thinking like, okay, what if there's emotional allomancy being used here, it shouldn't really be having an effect. So this might just be Breeze.
It might be, except that Vin has a thought later on that he's not using a copper cloud.
Well, he's not using the copper cloud. Breeze isn't.
No, I mean that Club is not making a copper cloud. That Breeze, that Clubs is just caring for himself in that regard.
Okay. So that's the reason. Then, yeah, it's, you know what? Then I also do think it's also just part of the character that he hasn't considered that somebody could soothe or riot him. He doesn't consider that.
True.
And again, as much as he has said, and he's explained it to us himself, that what she does and what an allomancer does is use the emotions that are there. So it's not as if this is mind control. It's actually helping him lose control.
Right. But we don't know if Alrion's philosophy on soothing is the same as Breeze's, although it might be. They've probably talked about it. We also don't know if Breeze knows that Alrion is a soother or not.
A rioter.
Or a
but
rioter,
also,
sure.
And also we don't know if Alrion just does that because she wants to, or if Alrion is doing it because she's a spy.
Perhaps. But doesn't the revelation that she is an allomancer that can do this recontextualize Set's proclamation. What do I care if she seduced him?
Mm. It contextualizes it that she is it's
Is the one
what
manipulating him.
yeah, that's just like, yeah, she probably did because that's what she's like. She uses that. She has no foible. Well, not, she has no problem doing allomantic romance.
So it would seem.
Well, that answers one question.
Mistress, Orasur said, sitting across the table from her in the dark room. With her allomancer's ears, she could hear exactly what was going on in the next booth-like room over.
Alrian is an allomancer.
Really? Vin nodded.
She's been rioting Breeze's emotions ever since she arrived, making him more attracted to her.
One would think that he'd notice.
Right, Orasur? You'd think.
Vin said. She probably shouldn't feel as amused as she did. The girl could be a Mistborn, though the idea of that puff flying through the mist seemed ridiculous. Oh, yeah, we didn't even comment on the whole 18-year-old of it.
Mm-hmm.
Breeze is middle-aged, early middle-aged, probably late 30s, early 40s, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's 18.
She's
Commented.
legal.
Better than
He
Straff.
commented. Yeah, better than Straff. She is a whole woman, and he at least has the grace to be a bit embarrassed
Yeah.
and worried about that. She is a beautiful woman. Okay, he isn't there going, oh gosh, those boobs are so old looking and things like that. So yeah,
Also, I don't think that Alrion is a Mistborn because I feel like Set would have minded more about Alrion leaving if she
yes,
were.
yes, absolutely. But then he could be double bluffing, and he does. All round is there to Mistborn about. Who knows?
True.
But I mean, it's funny that the way Vin thinks of her as a puff.
Mm.
It's like Vin, you're a wisp, okay? So yeah, which is probably exactly how she wants me to think. I have to remember Cliss and Shan. Neither one of them turned out to be the person I thought they were. Good, Vin. Keep an open mind.
Yeah.
Breeze probably just doesn't think his emotions are unnatural. He must be attracted to her already.
Orasor closed his mouth and cocked his head, his dog's version of a frown.
He's had a canine frown before, but so cute. I know. But at least we know he isn't the one using allomancy to seduce her. Either way, that's irrelevant. Clubs isn't the chondro.
Okay, look, Vin. If it's not okay for Breeze to seduce a woman
Yeah.
with soothing, it is not okay for a woman to seduce a man with soothing or rioting.
Thank you. Thank you, Dorkus. Vin just skips over that nicely. She's just like, yeah, well, he's the man. There. And she, but it makes more sense to her that the weaker, younger woman can do it. She can use that to her advantage because she's a girl. It's okay. She's got a double standard, and she's absolutely okay with her double standard. Yeah.
So this next question is important.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have you lead us into it again. Please.
Either way, that's irrelevant. Clubs isn't the chondro.
How could you possibly know that, mistress? So it really settled into me this week how many times Dogasor has asked, how can you know that? Or how do you know that? Especially in regards to Vin's abilities to pierce copper clouds, not just Chondra info, like how do you know I'm a male Chondra, but also with the copper clouds, because that's her biggest secret, and it is such a spy move to ask, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just that really sunk into me this week.
It's a spy move, but it's also a normal move. Like, how do you know that? Because we're investigating. But I guess a normal person would say, "Are you sure?" But the spy says, "How?" instead
Mm-hmm.
of yeah. And he wants to know how she possibly knows that. He wants to understand. It's a plausible enough phrasing, especially if you're so under disguise that you have not been considered by anyone but the readers as the chondra in question.
Yeah. Vin paused. Clubs always turned his copper on around Breeze. It was one of the few times he used it. It was difficult to tell if someone was burning copper. After all, if they turned on their metal, they hid themselves by default. But Vin could pierce copper clouds. She could sense Alrion's rioting. She could even sense a faint thumping coming from Clubs himself. Copper's own allomantic pulse, something that Vin suspected few people beyond herself and the Lord Ruler had ever heard. Okay, I may be wrong. It may be that Clubs has created a copper cloud and Alrion doesn't realize it, so she's soothing regardless, and Vin just happens to be able to see the attempt.
Yeah.
So...
But Vin doesn't go, oh, she doesn't go, oh, there's a copper cloud, so that's why, yes, we have Vin saying there's a copper cloud, and she has noticed that Orion is the seducer, right? But then she does also mention that Breeze probably already has those emotions for her anyway. That is where I would put in the reasoning that, oh well, she's doing she's rioting him, but it's not having an effect. Basically, yeah, I think if Vin went into detail about whether Alrion's allomancy is having an effect on Breeze, that would mean that there is a copper. She's calling attention to the copper cloud. So she can't even have those thoughts. She can't go, wait a second, there's a copper cloud. How is Breeze being affected by this?
Interesting.
Anyway, Vin could pierce copper clouds, yes.
Yeah, and her observation that few people have probably actually been able to sense that feels important to me.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Herself and the Lord Ruler had ever heard. Okay, so I think also that is also it's making you think about the thumping from the mountains or whatever
100%.
Because they could hear through copper clouds. They can hear coppers thumping. She and the Lord Ruler, who are not heroes of ages, could hear the thumping.
Yeah. Vin suspected few people beyond herself and the Lord Ruler had ever heard.
I just know.
If you say so, mistress. But didn't you already decide the spy was Demio?
I wanted to check Clubs anyway, before I did anything drastic.
Drastic? Vin sat quietly for a moment. She didn't have much proof, but she did have her instincts, and those instincts told her Demio was the spy. That sneaking way he'd gone out the other night, the obvious logic of choosing him, it all fit. She stood. Things were getting too dangerous, too sensitive. She couldn't ignore it any longer.
Come on, it's time to put Demio in prison.
So I'm glad she's finally checking this out.
Yeah. She's saying that it's time to go and put him in prison, but it's like she needs more. She knows she needs more proof. She has those two thoughts together. She's like, yeah, he makes sense. It's him. But I know I need more proof. And she's been avoiding looking for that proof. She's got to find it now.
Yeah. But it does turn out that Demio was sneaking out for something embarrassing. It wasn't a girlfriend, but it was something embarrassing.
What do you mean you lost him?
Vin asked, standing outside the door to Demio's room. The servant flushed.
My lady, I'm sorry. I watched him, like you told me, but he went out on patrol. Should I have followed? I mean, don't you think that would have looked suspicious?
Vin cursed quietly to herself. She knew she didn't have much right to be angry.
I should have told Ham straight off,
she thought with frustration.
My lady, he only left a few minutes ago.
Vin glanced at Orasur, then took off down the corridor. As soon as they reached a window, Vin leaped out into the dark night, Orasur following behind her, dropping the short distance to the courtyard.
Last time I saw him come back through the gates to the palace grounds,
she thought, running through the mist. She found a couple of soldiers there guarding.
Did Captain Demure come this way?
She demanded, bursting into their ring of torchlight. They perked up, at first, shocked, then confused. Lady Eyre? One of them said. Yes, you went out on patrol a minute or two ago.
By himself?
They nodded.
Isn't that a little odd?
They shrugged. He goes by himself sometimes. We don't question. He's our superior, after all.
Which way? Vin
demanded. One pointed and Vin took off, Orasur at her side.
I should have watched better. I should have hired real spies to keep an eye on him. I should have...
She froze. Up ahead in the mists, a figure was walking down a quiet street. Demio. Okay, so obviously now that we know it's not Demio, or now that we presume it's not Demio,
Mm-hmm.
who in the crew does that leave? We know it's not Ham. We know it's not Breeze. We know it's not Clubs. We know it's not Spook. We know it's not Doc. We suspect
We don't know.
strongly it's not Dachshund.
Mm-hmm. We suspect it's not Dachshund because of the logical thing of like, really,
Vin,
why would you put, yeah.
her instincts.
Mm.
We know it's Vin doesn't. Vin has no reason
Mhm.
to believe it's Sazed,
Yeah, he wasn't there.
and I think he has good reason to believe it's not Tindwyl either.
Yeah.
Uh
So she's gonna have to come to the Orosur conclusion
yeah, I mean,
somehow.
does this bring her back to square one? Sans a Dogosaur suspect? I think it
No.
does.
Well, it brings her back to do something to Dachshund,
Oh
soothe
yeah.
him, do right him. It means confirm Dachshund. Then you can really very much go, who the hell is it?
I think the shit's gonna hit the fan though before. I don't think she's ever actually gonna figure it out. I think it will be revealed to her.
Mm.
Vin dropped a coin and threw herself into the air, passing far over his head, landing on top of a building. He kept walking, oblivious. Demio or Khandra, neither would have allomantic powers. Vin paused, daggers out, ready to spring. But she still didn't have any real proof. The part of her that Kelsier had transformed, the part that had come to trust, thought of the Demio she knew.
Do I really believe he's the Khandra? Or do I just want him to be the Khandra so that I don't have to suspect my real friends?
He
It's not about
continued.
suspecting your real friends, Vin. It's about your real friends being dead. But I also
Yes.
understand that the suspect, like being suspicious of them, is not. She's uncomfortable with that. That's the feeling that she sticks with. She is most uncomfortable about. But it's like you do know that it means they're dead.
Yup. Well said. He continued to walk below her, her tin-enhanced ears easily picking out his footfalls. Behind, Orosor scrambled up onto the top of the roof, then padded over and sat down beside her.
I think it's so funny having this Orosur description, like as we follow Demure and have all these thoughts. It's like we know we're like, oh, it's Dogoshir, it's the Dogoshir's the Khandra, but so having his actions like visually, I suppose, like reminded, just having him physically a physical reminder makes all of this just very dramatically ironic, and I love it.
Yeah, I'm so prepared to be wrecked over the revelation.
Mm-hmm. I can't just attack. I need to at least watch, see where he's going, get proof.
Perhaps to learn something in the process. She waved to Orosor and they quietly followed Demio, sticking to the rooftops. Soon Vin noticed something odd. A flicker of firelight illuminating the mists a few streets over, making haunted shadows of buildings. Vin trailed Demio with her eyes as he wandered down an alleyway toward the illumination.
What?
Vin threw herself off the roof. It took only 3 bounds for her to reach the source of the light. A modest bonfire crackled in the center of a small square. Ska huddled around it for warmth, looking a little frightened in the mists. Vin was surprised to see them. She hadn't seen Ska go out in the mists since the night of the collapse. And at this point, I know
Mm-hmm.
this is a religion thing.
Yeah. Initially, I was like, oh, maybe he is going to a girlfriend. But then, yeah, crowd, fires. Yeah, we knew. Okay. It makes so much sense.
Yep. And of course, he would be a well respected person in the
Mm-hmm.
religion because he knew him personally.
Mm-hmm.
Demio approached down a side street, greeting several of the others. In the firelight, she could confirm for certain that it was him, or at least a conjurer with his face. There were perhaps 200, that's a lot, people in the
Mm.
square. Demio moved to sit on the cobblestones, but someone quickly approached with a chair. A young woman brought him a mug of something steaming, which he received gratefully. Vin leaped to a rooftop, staying low to keep from being exposed by the firelight. More Ska arrived, mostly in groups, but some brave individuals came alone. It's going to be dangerous when
This
the
is
mist starts killing people.
yeah, that is gonna be a problem. Like, okay, yeah, he's telling them, we figure out why. He's saying don't fear the mist, and it's just like, yeah, actually, you gotta. Um, And you see, and also you have these signs of respect that they're giving him. So, like you said, he's a
Yeah.
respected person. He's got a chair and he gets something to drink. He's giving the sermon, you know.
Yeah. Hearing a sound behind her, Vin turned as Orasor, apparently having barely made the jump, scrambled the last few feet over the edge onto the roof. He glanced down at the street below, shook his head, then padded over to join her. She raised a finger to her lips, nodding down at the growing group of people. Orasor cocked his head at the sight, but said nothing. Finally, Demio stood, holding the still steaming cup in his hands. People gathered around, sitting on the cold cobblestones, huddled beneath blankets or cloaks. Okay, it's sermon time.
Mm-hmm. And they've come out in the mist and the cold to do this. They don't have a hall or anything. So I suppose this is it. So they're very dedicated.
And Kelsier's whole thing was, I am hope. And
Mm-hmm.
Sazed's start of the chapter is always have hope. This
Mm-hmm.
book ends that start of the chapter really nicely.
Mm-hmm. Another bookend is the corruption of beliefs, the growth of beliefs. Heroes where they setting up heroes when they aren't. That sort of thing comes through.
We shouldn't fear the mists, my friends, Demio said. His wasn't the voice of a strong leader or a forceful battle commander. It was the voice of a hardened youth, a little hesitant, but compelling nonetheless. The survivor taught us this. I know it's difficult to think of the mists without remembering stories of mysteries or other horrors, but the survivor gave the mists to us. We should try to remember him through them.
Lord Ruler. He's one of them, a member of the Church of the Survivor.
She wavered, uncertain what to think. Was he the Khandra or wasn't he? Why would the Khandra meet with a group of people like this? But why would Demir himself do it?
Yeah, so cool. Then you're catching on. This doesn't make him the Khandra.
Yes.
This doesn't fit with him being the Khandra. Like the Khandra is what on the side a religious fanatic, or the Khandra is hired to be a religious fanatic. It doesn't make sense. So this is proof that he's not the Khandra. But
Yeah.
still, I would also be curious. What is the Church of the Survivor doing? It's kind of important to keep an eye on that, Vin.
Very important. They will be an ally in your time of need, probably.
Mm-hmm. Or they might get out of control. So you should keep an eye on that.
That too. I know it's hard without the survivor. I know you're afraid of the armies. Trust me, I see them too. I know you suffer beneath this siege. I don't know if I can even tell you not to worry. The survivor himself knew great hardship. The death of his wife, his imprisonment in the pits of Ascension. But he survived. That's the point, isn't it? We have to live on, no matter how hard all this gets. We'll win in the end, just like he did. That's a nice little sermon so far.
Yeah, it is. Yes, we know he's not lying. He's not making stuff up. It's the truth. Yeah, things are bad, and I don't know if I can tell you not to worry, which is in contrast with Sazed's thing. He's
Yeah.
saying, yeah, okay, there is something to worry about, but look, our leader, the person that we are grateful for, he went through hardship, so let's go through hardship. We can go through hardship too. We can fight too, which is all. I think that's good. He's not making anything up about Kelsier. It is just that he's is adding significance. He's taking the significance of Kelsier's life and spreading it over theirs.
Yeah. He stood with his mug in his hands, looking nothing like the Scott preachers Vin had seen before. Upon his death, Kelsier had commanded Orsor to appear wearing Kelsier's bones before passionate men to found his religion. Or more precisely, to found the revolution that the religion had arisen from. Kelsier had needed leaders who could inflame supporters, whip them up into a destructive upheaval. Demio was something different. He didn't shout, but spoke calmly, yet people paid attention. They sat on the stones around him, looking up with hopeful, even worshipful eyes. Saint Demio?
Yeah, that's like, okay, I see that that's an instinct that just happens with people. Like they become worshipful because this is their only source of hope. This is where this is the pillar that they can, count on. So they start worshiping even just the person who's preaching the hope.
Yeah. The Lady Air. What of her? Lady Vin bears a great responsibility. You can see the weight bowing her down, and how frustrated she is with the problems in the city. She is a straightforward woman, and I don't think she likes the Assembly's politicking.
No lies detected.
No lies detected. But then a woman, I have decided, asks the next question.
But she'll protect us, right?
Yes. Yes, I believe she will. Sometimes I think that she's even more powerful than the survivor was. You know that he only had 2 years to practice as a Mistborn? She's barely had that much time herself. Vin turned away.
It comes back to that. They sound rational until they talk about me. And then...
She'll bring us peace someday. See, now, Vin, they sound so rational until they start talking about you. Either means that they are never rational or that you're hard on yourself. But to be fair, they're saying you're going to save the day, so I get it.
Yeah. But it's not so much about, actually, it's not about her itself. It's just, that's what they want her to be. It's not the virtue of her. I don't know. I feel like Vin saying this until they talk about me. She doesn't even know, actually. When she has this thought, she doesn't even know how far they've gone with this thought about her.
Yeah, well, she's about to learn.
Mm-hmm.
She'll bring us peace someday. The air will bring back the sun, stop the ash from falling. But we have to survive until then. And we have to fight. The survivor's entire work was to see the Lord Ruler dead and make us free. What gratitude do we show if we run now that armies have come? Go and tell your assemblymen that you don't want Lord Set or even Lord Penrod to be your king. The vote happens in 1 day, and we need to make certain the right man is made king. The survivor chose Ellen Venture, and that is whom we must follow.
That's new.
Vin thought. So, yeah, that's very new.
Mm-hmm.
Bring back the sun, stop the ash from falling?
Yeah, that is... Sorry, where did you get that, love?
So the fact that it is so specific and so, dare I say, prophetic makes me wonder if it's the whispers that are saying this to people.
Just there is another force that's telling them these things.
Yes.
Or for me, I don't know, initially I thought it was just the natural progression of what happens with mythology and religion.
That could be it too.
Religious figures, where it's just like, okay, so if Calcia was still alive, they would say Calcia is the one that's going to bring the sun back and all of that. But I feel like what they've done is they've taken old stories that spoke about a day where the sun would not be red and the ash would stop falling. They had that previously. Now they've just, this new contender came in with Vin and Calcia, and they're new heroes, and they just naturally attached that hope to these heroes. But that initial thing of the world one day turning back to normal, that is a real prophecy. I think that this is just a commentary on how things evolve, how religion evolves. And that doesn't make it untrue. And hey, well, it's interesting to have someone say the survivor chose Ellen Venture. Like, I don't know if he
that
chose
didn't quite
him,
happen that way.
Yeah, but you know what? Whatever makes you sleep at night, and yes, whatever gets Ellen votes, I suppose. At this point, he didn't choose Ellen. He didn't choose Ellen, but he saved Ellen.
Yeah.
Like, we know that, just personally. That counts for us, but it doesn't really make sense for the rest of them.
True.
Lord Elland is weak. He won't defend us.
Lady Vin loves him. She wouldn't love a weak man. Penrod and Set treat you like this guy used to be treated, and that's why you think they're strong. But that's not strength. It's oppression. We have to be better than that. We have to trust the survivor's judgment. Also a good line. Accurate.
Yeah.
Penrod
Yeah,
seems a little nicer than that, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need the we must trust the survivor's judgment. It's more like, no, guys, you are Scar. Think about this. Think about what you're gonna get from those two leaders, and yeah, you think you're gonna be okay and go back to a better way because things weren't as dire before. But you were slaves, okay? It's the reframing of safety versus freedom. What was it? Safety versus freedom, but it's like slavery versus freedom.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
ultimately,
reframing
the
is.
would-be slaves are the ones that have to make that choice. Elend can't make it for them, so this is a timely chapter for this.
Write your congressman is basically what he's saying as well.
Well said. Vin relaxed against the lip of the roof, tension melting a bit. If Demio really was the spy, then he wasn't going to give her any evidence this night. So she put her knives away, then rested with her arms folded on the rooftop's edge. The fire crackled in the cool winter evening, sending billows of smoke to mix with the mists, and Demio continued to speak in his quiet, reassuring voice, teaching the people about Kelsier.
It's not even really a religion. The theology is so simple, not at all like the complex belief that Sazed speaks about.
At that part, I wondered if Vin herself would be a convert.
Of some sort, where it's like, she's like, oh, the religion of hope is she's okay with that.
Yeah.
She doesn't need it. She likes that it's not that complex. But then again, she's highly uncomfortable with her role in the whole thing.
Well said. Demio taught basic concepts. He held up Kelsier as a model, talking about survival and about enduring hardships. Vin could see why the direct words would appeal to the Ska. The people really only had two choices, to struggle on or to give up. Demio's teachings gave them an excuse to keep living. The Ska didn't need rituals, prayers, or codes. Not yet. They were too inexperienced with religion in general, too frightened of it to want such things. But the more she listened, the more Vin understood the Church of the Survivor. It was what they needed. It took what the Ska already knew, a life filled with hardship, and elevated it to a higher, more optimistic plane. Yeah, she
I
gets
love
it now.
that. Yeah, that is the value of religion. Before all the rituals and things like that, that's the core of what it does. It gives your life meaning.
Yep.
They didn't need rituals, prayers, or codes. That's another thing, that this religion is in such infancy that it doesn't have codes and things like that. It hasn't been corrupted yet by this person putting in their doctrine and this person putting in their doctrine and this one and that one, and they all use the core guy Kelsier as the excuse to develop that religion. This is where it's at its purest form, where it's like, no, there is a guy that lived his life a certain way, and we want to live that way too. That's it.
Yeah.
It's as close as it gets. And also, it's his life was meaningful, my life is meaningful, and that gives me hope, and I can continue. And that's why religion becomes important to people, and then it goes down the path of all the ritual and the blah blah blah.
Yeah. And the teachings were still evolving. The deification of Kelsier she had expected. Even the reverence for her was understandable. But where did Demio get the promises that Vin would stop the ash and bring back the sun? How did he know to preach of green grasses and blue skies, describing the world as it was described only in some of the world's most obscure texts? And that right there is specifically why I think it's whispers and not just some evolution, because they know specific details. They have no reason to think the sun was yellow and grass was green.
Yeah, you're right, because it's like they know, even having like old stories, that resurface, and become more believable now that there's more hope. They really were so far removed. They were only in obscure texts. We've had several times where Vin has gone, like when you've seen that Vin's gone, what? About certain colors, and Ellen's also gone, huh? Like that why would they be green, kind of thing.
Exactly.
It's so far off. So yeah, it seems to be leaning towards some other faction, or not faction, force.
He described a strange world of colors and beauty, a place foreign and difficult to conceive, but wonderful all the same. Flowers and green plants were strange, alien things to these people. Even Vin had trouble visualizing them, and she had heard Sazed's descriptions. Demure was giving the Ska a paradise. It had to be something completely removed from normal experience, for the mundane world was not a place of hope. Not with a foodless winter approaching, not with armies threatening and the government in turmoil. Vin pulled back as Demure finally ended the meeting. She lay for a moment trying to decide how she felt. She'd been nearly certain about Demure, but now her suspicions seemed unfounded. He'd gone out at night, true, but she saw now what he was doing. Plus, he'd acted so suspiciously when sneaking out, it seemed to her as she reflected that a Condra would know how to go about things in a much more natural way. Thank you, Vin. Yes, correct.
Yeah, I think you made that point. Really? He's a spy. Literally, like, bred to be a spy. I think he would be okay with sneaking. He wouldn't look so obvious.
Yeah.
But just this whole section, just again, I'd like to just repeat how great it is as an examination of religion, the theme of religion and belief and all of that. There's problems right there that are in front of them. There's mundane life, but then there's also catastrophe happening. And then there's this paradise that is being described that makes all of this worth getting through. Yeah, I love Sanderson's examination of religion in all of his books. Elantris also does that.
Yeah.
And definitely Way of Kings.
Yeah.
It's not him. Or if it is, he's not going to be as easy to unmask as I thought.
She frowned in frustration. Finally, she sighed, rising, and walked to the other side of the roof. Orasor followed, and Vin glanced at him.
When Kelsier told you to take his body, what did he want you to preach to these people? Ooh.
And at this point, I'm thinking, oh, she's asking questions he's probably not going to know full details on. This is her chance to catch him.
Yep. So her chance to catch him, our chance to catch him. What is he going to say?
Mistress?
He needed time to think. Right? Like, you could have answered the question. Why do you have to say mistress after that? You thinking.
Brain working 1,000 miles an hour.
And also he's saying that so that he could find a bit more about what she wants to hear.
Ooh, well said.
He's saying, like, mistress, like, give me more. So he had you appear as if you were him returned from the grave. See, he didn't know that. Well, he does know that. I suppose he could have gleaned that information, but that needed to be stated to him.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone really, short of interviewing the people that he appeared to, and I have no way how to track those people down, I don't think anyone in the crew would have been comfortable enough around Orasor to say, hey, what were you saying to them when you were Kelsier?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mistress?
He had you appear as if you were him returned from the grave.
Yes.
Well, what did he have you say? Sorry, I put in a lot of frustration there. But you see, this is very obvious that he's like, so yes, he doesn't give the answer. He knows what her question is, but he gives reasons or makes hedges so that she can give more details that show what she wants him to say. So and I love this interaction coming straight off her looking at Demure and everything. Anyway.
Orasor shrugged. Very simple things, mistress. I told them that the time for rebellion had arrived. I told them that I, Kelsier, had returned to give them hope for victory. That is such a generic answer.
And then Vin thinks of the exact one. So, like, it's a very general thing, and the thing that he said was pretty powerful. Why not say exactly?
Yeah.
So maybe Vin will at some point realize this, whether when it's revealed to her that it's Dorkus, or if she figures it out, this will be part of it. But yeah, this is all laid out.
The flashbacks will be intense.
Yeah. With the music building and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I represent that thing you've never been able to kill, no matter how hard you try.
They had been Kelsier's final words, spoken face to face with the Lord Ruler.
I am hope. I am hope.
Was it any wonder that this concept would become central to the church that sprang up around him?
Did he have you teach things like we just heard Demure say? About the ash no longer falling and the sun turning yellow?
No, mistress,
That's what I thought.
Vin said as she heard rustling on the stones below. She glanced over the side of the building and saw Demio returning to the palace. Vin dropped to the alleyway floor behind him. To the man's credit, he heard her and he spun, hand on dueling cane. Okay. Confrontation,
Here we
let's
go.
go.
Confrontation, yeah. Again, Vin impulse, just like, you know what? Yeah, okay, fine. I'm not going to get evidence from him today. But you know what? I'm just going to talk to him right now. Why not? Peace, Captain.
Lady Vin? She nodded, approaching closer so that he'd be able to see her better in the night. Fading torchlight still lit the air from behind, swirls of mist playing with shadows.
I didn't know you were a member of the Church of the Survivor.
He looked down. Though he was easily 2 hands taller than she, he seemed to shrink a bit before her. Yeah, I mean, it's like basically your goddess is now talking to you. I know it makes you uncomfortable. I'm sorry.
It's all right. You do a good thing for the people. Elend will appreciate hearing of your loyalty.
Do you have to tell him?
He needs to know what the people believe, Captain. Why would you want me to keep it quiet?
I don't want the crew to think I'm out here pandering to the people. Thinks preaching about the survivor is silly, and Lord Breeze says the only reason to encourage the church is to make people more pliant. Vin regarded him in the darkness.
You really believe, don't you?
Yes, my lady.
But you knew Calcia. You were with us from near the beginning. You know he's no god.
Good question, Vin. Direct and excellent, because I want to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah. And just a note here that now it does make a lot of sense of how ashamed Demure seems a lot of the time. Because he was
with
he was acting
heretics.
shifty. Yeah, he's shifty, but he's like, oh, he's the heretic to them. Because they're like, no, this is not an idea. This is not a good thing for you to be doing. And he's like, no, I believe. But this is a great confrontation because it's like, okay, cool. You are still you are deifying him. You are doing the religious thing instead of just saying, oh yeah, Calcia was a good guy.
Yep. Demio looked up, a bit of a challenge in his eyes. He died to overthrow the Lord Ruler.
That doesn't make him divine.
He taught us how to survive, to have hope.
You survived before. People had hope before Calcia got thrown in the pits.
Not like we do now. Besides, he had power, my lady. I felt it. Vin paused. She knew the story. Calcier had used Demio as an example to the rest of the army in a fight with a skeptic, directing his blows with allomancy, making Demio seem as if he had supernatural powers. And there I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. I can see it.
Yeah, I can see her being told the story. It's not something new. It's been a long enough time has passed for this information to have come to her.
No, I mean, I also, for Demio to think of him as a god, it's like, yeah, when you throw that in, I can see it.
Yeah, he felt the power. But, well, I like that it doesn't... but I like that it doesn't end there, though. I like that
agreed.
It's not just him being mistaken, as we see now.
Oh, I know about allomancy now, but I felt him pushing on my sword that day. I felt him use me, making me more than I was. Sometimes I think I can still feel him, strengthening my arm, guiding my blade. Vin frowned.
Do you remember the first time we met?
Yes, you came to the caverns where we were hiding on the day when the army was destroyed. I was on guard duty. You know, my lady, even then I knew Kelsier would come for us. I knew he'd come and get those of us who had been faithful and guide us back to Lucidel.
He went to those caves because I forced him to. He wanted to get himself killed fighting an army on his own. I like that because that is the counter. It's like, yes, all the deeds look pristine once they're done, but there's the behind the scenes, okay, that happens where a human is a human and is flawed and had arguments and had other options that they wanted to pursue.
Look, they're not saying he's perfect, just that he's a god.
Yeah, you see, they're trying to like shift between. No, we're not saying he's a god, but
He's a god.
The destruction of the army was a test, Demio said, looking up into the mists. These armies, the siege, they're only tests, to see whether we will survive.
And the ash? Where did you hear that it would stop falling?
Demio turned back to her. The survivor thought that, didn't he? Vin shook her head. A lot of people are saying it. It must be true. It fits with everything else. The yellow sun, the blue sky, the plants.
That's interesting. That's great. He's like, he knows that it's just, oh, we just kind of heard it. Everyone's saying it, so I mean, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think this is connecting to the Terrace prophecies and the deepness. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it is connecting. We just don't know exactly how. Is it whispers or is it just literally tiny, tiny remnants of the Terrace prophecies coming through?
Yeah.
Naturally through folklore or whatever. And again, that just bookends really nicely with the epigraph where it was like he spoke about beliefs being corrupted. And it's not, by saying that, it's not that they're being corrupted, like evil. It's that they develop beyond anybody's control. Like even here, this sermon man, he's being influenced by what other people are telling him when he's the guy that's preaching. So he's just preached that message that was given to him by people. So it's all just building. It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Yes, but where did you first hear those things?
I'm not sure, my lady.
Where did you hear that I would be the one to bring them about?
She thought, but she couldn't bring herself to voice the question. Regardless, she knew the answer. Demio wouldn't know. Rumors were propagating. It would be difficult indeed to trace them back to their source now.
Go back to the palace. I have to tell Enid what I saw, but I'll ask him not to tell the rest of the crew.
Thank you, my lady, Demio said, bowing. He turned and hurried away. A second later, Vin heard a thump from behind, or a sword jumping down to the street. She turned.
I was sure it was him.
Mistress?
The conjurer. I thought I'd discovered him.
And? She shook her head.
It's like Doxson. I think Demure knows too much to be faking. He feels real to me.
My brethren
are quite skilled. Yes, I know. But we're not going to arrest him. Not tonight, at least. We'll keep an eye on him, but I just don't think it's him anymore.
Orisor nodded.
Come on. I want to check on Elend.
End chapter. Long chapter.
Yeah, long chapter, but I will say, okay, yeah, that's true. Technically, we don't have proof that it's not him because we haven't used emotional allomancy on him and seen what happens. We've just used logic here to be like, yeah, a spy wouldn't be doing this and it just makes no sense that the spy would be doing this. So therefore it's real. He seems real.
Agreed.
But again, just Duralumin his ass. Everybody needs to be Duralumined and allomanced at the same time. Emotionally allomanced and see what happens.
I agree.
God.
Oh gosh.
Long chapter. Much said.
Much said. I'll be very interested to see if this whole breeze kicking metals becomes a thing. I wasn't scared before tonight that Breeze was going to die in this book, but now I'm afraid Breeze is going to die in this book.
Mm-hmm. Is Alriane a spy or just a seductress?
I think she's a seductress. I think she's into Breeze, and that's that.
I immediately was like, oh, she's a spy. But yeah, you're right. I guess I just didn't want her to be. I would rather have her seducing Breeze for spy reasons than her seducing Breeze because she's like really
predatory.
Taking advantage of him. Yeah, she's predatory. That's it. Exactly. Like the video
if you like, and subscribe to That Darn Kitta if you get a chance, because she's got a great channel too. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Get Bye.